Okay, here's a little one about Halloween and the season and kind of the seasons we're going through now, for we've reached past summer by far. If you're watching this in the future, this was made coming right into Halloween of 2020. Quite the year, hasn't it been? Well, if I was to say I'm going to give you a flashcard about seasons, something simple like that, and I flashed forward something like a deer with a red nose, you'd go with Christmas real quickly. If I was to even just take probably a pumpkin, you would instantly flash over to Halloween. It wouldn't even have to be carved. Indeed, if I took and spun these, put the candles out, and spun these around the other way, it would actually just be a harvest symbol. And there's been a conflagration over time of old mythologies and folklore and rituals that we still carry on, from the paganistic type, woo woo. But some of these were held by all people. And that's somewhat special. And then when you go into it, it seems to fade off into time before time, coming from the Wayback Machine. And portions of it seem like it surely should have and could have. When you look at something like Halloween, you can tell that it clearly is a symbol of the harvest. And it's really a symbol of second harvest, for if you plant at the right time, coming into the full moons and so on, at the first part of the year, a lot of these crops will grow 12 weeks and so on, and they'll go into their states. And so then you have the harvest off that and a replanting, and you're able to have another one that comes in. Certain plants are done certain times of the year, and farmers' almanacs are incredible resources for things like that. I found that out whenever I was working on a ranch for a while. For a lot of this symbology seems to come from there. And some people, whoop, I've been idle for too long. Some people think of other things, though, that could be symbolic. For I could show you a flashcard of like witches, and instantly Halloween, a cauldron and stuff like that, and Halloween, witches, yeah. But in the background here, there's a couple of scarecrows. What's that got to do with everything? Well, it goes twofold with something, and I actually could probably do an own video on scarecrows, but a simplistic form of it is the fact that this is meant to scare things away from the crops, and we know that. For people used to have to stand out there when they talk about tending the crops, there'd be a guy walking around through the fields scaring the birds off, doing these types of things. Well, why do they got this symbology that goes on with it? Well, if you look, it looks like Jesus, doesn't it? Or Odin on the tree. Except for it doesn't have his head anymore. Now it's a jack-o'-lantern put it on there, but a lot of these, and even modern ones, they do take a Halloween mask and put it on it or whatever, but it's just meant to scare away. It can scare away people too, because there are people that sometimes might come in and try to hive some of your stuff and things like that. And maybe you think that's, oh, it's really a person there, oh, I'm not going to go. Of course, anybody that knows anything about scarecrows wouldn't, but the birds are made to be kept away somewhat. But then when you find out that this ain't symbology that goes along with this scarecrow situation has to do with even people being impaled, like another symbology, like Vlad Dracula, and now we've got vampires, and here we have another attachment in a twofold way, and where people were impaled and then just left to rot, tied up to a thing like this. And indeed, a lot of those people had lost their heads. They put a fake one on top of it. A lot of people know jack-o'-lanterns originally were like turnips and things, and they were using them out of that until they found a better gourd here, and it grew into the thing that we know now. But that word, even jack-o'-lantern, it means a lot of things, for it's like a lantern, and a lantern's different than a regular torchlight or anything because it focuses the light out. For if you were to carry one of these things around, it's shining out its eyes and his mouth. And if you were just to make a round hole in it where the nose is, it's a lot bigger than the nose, like big as this mouth over here that goes ooh, it would be almost like a flashlight. And in fact, the old early lights on cars and everything like that were actually just a lit up dill with real shiny mirrored sides on the inside, bouncing all the light and trying to make it out. And the only place it could make it out would be the hole. And you could even swing a little thing in front of that hole and it would cut it off. But the other part of that name, Jack, that's important too. For Jack is like a Loki character. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jumped over the candlestick. Is that the same guy? Well, really, it comes from the same root. Really need to do a whole one about that. Because, well, Jacks can actually be a prince too, can't they? Yeah, it's in cards. To this day, we know what a Jack of Hearts is, and that's the prince, the king, and the queen, and so on, right? And how that works. But also, it's a mischievous person, for he jump over the candlestick and crap, but also, doesn't he, Jack climbs that beanstalk and all those things too, right? Overtakes the giants, which actually goes along with old folklore that all went with the Celts and things like that, and Fomorian giants and things we've talked about recently and through this year. So I'm over here standing by a Jesus effigy with a bunch of fags near it. What's a fag? Oh, that's the name for a bundle of sticks. It's not the modern connotation that's given for it. In fact, one of the first connotations or whenever I was a kid, we had a foreign exchange student come in, and we smoked cigarettes when we were kids even, and he came up to us and he asked one of the guys there, did he have a fag? And the guy looked at him weird, and then he started to point it to this kid who thought was gay. And I was like, no, I think it means cigarettes. And he goes, yeah. And so I said menthol or regular, and he said, do you have both? And and I go, no, he smokes menthol, I smoke regulars, and he wanted regular, da da da. So anyhow, but that's just bundles of sticks, and if you look at it, the very top of the bundle there, that's kind of wheat or different types of produce, and you would take that and shuck it off of there. But then these bundles, you could just leave them in that bundle right there, and that's kindling for starting fires and so on. And they would use these fag bundles for burning witches. In fact, that's one of the symbols for it. They'd use some 12 of them quite often, and stick it around them and set that on fire, for it's like a kindling thing. But if you get that all going real quick, it creates such a quick fire because it's all kindling. It's going to kill somebody real quick. But during this event here, for I'm in the Neverwinter game, and this is an event, and it's actually the celebration of Mask. Yeah, it's called the Masquerade of Liars, and you get to wear masks. And so I guess you're lying about your identity and going around, and masquerade balls and so on, and nobody knows who everybody is. But then, who is Mask? Well, he was a trickster god too, and nobody knew what he ever looked like. He apparently was somebody who could change his appearance quite often, and so on, like guys in the movies did, and things like that you see that they master of disguise and so on. But he could do that. But also, there's this connotation going back with things that go way back, like Sargon the Great, and there's this mask that we know about, and it looks like somebody would put that type of thing on their face. And in fact, old theater people, and the theater thing that we see that's drama and happy and sad that we think of, is the old theater mask that people would put on in a way. And when they would put on the mask, they would put on a guise, and then they would go into that. Well, how does that go back? That goes back to shamanistic stuff and things that are well over 10,000 years old. Yeah, well over. And I'm looking at it thinking it's got to be 30, 40, 50 at least, and probably spans the whole span of Cro-Magnon man, leading back about 50,000 BC. And some of it probably comes from further than that, with Homo sapiens that predate that. Neanderthal had probably some things going on about that. But here it's just called the celebration of Mask, and we understand that goes with it for, Jason and da-da-da. Well, everybody wears a mask at Halloween. You get to dress up like things. But of course, until a modern day, they were all crazy creatures. Here's one of the masks that you can get. It's the Eye of the Beholder. You can get the jack-o'-lantern mask, and it's the one that I usually use on my other character. There's an owl mask, which this character is not wearing. There's this mask here that's a demon type character, and well, I could get that and put it on, but I already have horns here on her because she's a tiefling type character. So there's another look at that mask, but a giant one. Here's another owl that's a giant one. Well, let's look around here, all these things, for all of this has to do with it. For the colors that seem to go along with it are a reddish ochre or orange type color, which if you mix red ochre and yellow ochre, a little more yellow than red, you usually get an orange color, by the way. And orange is a rare color too, by the way. There are only a few things that are orange, like blue that we talked about and how rare that can be. Wow, they light up there. It looks like a crescent moon in the sky. We'll look at the moon here in a minute. Got something to say about that. But if you look at this, it has to do with fire and flames. A lot of it does. And even the Celtic rites and everything and the Burning Man and everything that goes along with it has to do with fire and flames. And in fact, this yellow and orange are the colors of flame. And then you have black, and it's the correlate of burning things, but also it's sun worship. And for our sun is a black object, just like a torch is, but when you set it on fire, boom. And so this is all magic, because fire is a magic thing. Make no bones about it that there's this secret hovering little thing that eats the energy of something and burns it all up. And if you touch it, wow, that's got some power. Oh yeah, I remember touching a birthday candle whenever I was a kid, or at least I had a picture of it, and I feel like I still have the memory of it, only being a few years old and reaching out and apparently touching a birthday candle. Odd thing was my mom took pictures of me before and then after where I'm going, and it's like, so you sat and let me do that. And so we think about corn and things like that in a time of harvest and all these setups. And hey, these are some pretty good jack-o'-lanterns. Of course, in a modern day, they do a lot of different things. I guess other symbologies that you would get would be a black cat or a cat, especially a black cat. A lot of people don't know how that works with it all too, but that's really a component or the familiar to a witch, right? Yeah. And a witch is, of course, Halloweenish. But remember I talked about how you could take amber rods and wool and rub it and make that spark like when you're a kid and you rub around the carpet. You can still do it today and touch a door handle or anything or somebody else and get this shock out of it. It's like the shock of life. Yeah, it's kind of a magic-y thing that you can pull off. You ever notice you can do that to cats and you get the same bristle off of it? You ever done that at nighttime and realize that there's this green crackle that goes along with it and everything? Yeah. So you can do that and then have somebody come up and if it's dry and stuff, and it's gonna happen. And I remember doing it to a cat one time and go to touch his nose, and he sat there and like gonna sniff at my finger, and all of a sudden you saw that art go across there, and he took off. Anyhow, I love cats. Not being mean to them, just hey, better not mess with me. I've got the power of God here. So what's neat about this here is that you get these charms. Well, my inventory is full. That's terrible. What did I take into it that I have? Oh, yeah, a regular bag. I get a 20% off any item, which I actually need. I'll go do that here in a minute. Let me see something else. So I don't have anything in my overflow, do I? Yep, that's the problem. Won't let you pick up things whenever you're just so encumbered you've got crap in your overflow. Understandable. That's just a daily bag, but look, they keep giving me coupons and filling back up. Oh, don't you want a coupon for this? See, 30% off any amount. I don't want that. What is this? Oh, it's any refinement item. No, I'm probably not going to use that. Anyhow, oh, I see something else. Okay, so you grab this. Sometimes the pumpkin doesn't go away, it just loses its sparkle and you go on. And then you notice that these guys that are around here that are dressed up in Halloween outfits from all around, and they're wearing these guises, and whenever somebody talks to them, it activates them. And then you saw them a minute ago where they stood up and went, ah, and did a little activity. Well, it was doing that every time somebody gave them a charm. But I think they turned that off and they just had them activate naturally. Normally because it got to be a pain in the ass and kind of funny looking too, with this guy that's going around just jerking all the time. So there's all these lanterns that are left out at the houses. So you don't knock on the house and trick or treat, but they've left deals and you get the charms from these houses. And then you can give, see, I didn't have the charm a minute ago, but I did. It gave me the other bag. Now, the other bag, you've seen me on my other guy get on my witch's broom, right? Well, I don't have the witch's broom. Let me back up my viewpoint so you can see what's going on here. I don't have my witch's broom on this for, well, she's got even a witch's guise and the whole 9 yards and the witch's hat with a different outfit she's got. But also, her mount's already a ghost, so I was kind of like, well, I'll get it next year. And, well, this is like the second year I decided to not even do it last year because she's got the ghost. But you can see this is a ghost and it does this scary thing. And whenever I go around, I'm just like smoke, like a vampire again. So let's go through some folklore about some old runes. Oh, there's a pumpkin. These are the Illabruians and the elves. And what do they got to do with standing stone circles and runes? Well, let's go to a place that apparently the people showed out much later. Yeah, what's neat about Dungeons and Dragons and things like that, it spans quite a bit of time and history. Oh, wait. Hey, you need a charm. You're welcome. Hey, you too. Wait, really? You too. So, also, by the way, get off my mountain, I look like this, and I've got my demon wings on, and that kind of goes with Halloween too. That's from the last event for We Were in Hell. What does Halloween got to do with Halloween? Well, you wouldn't believe that Hella and Halla have a lot to do with each other, but they do. So you see this wraith type ghost, and let's see, where is it? I can actually change my appearance to where I'm kind of like that. I'm ethereal now, I'm ghost like. Isn't that neat? Because I'm part of her team. But this somewhat I think looks better. Anyhow, let's go with a little more folklore type of thing instead of going into depth in every single one of these. That would just run this into a multiple um, parter on it, and I don't want to do that necessarily. Um, so seriously? Oh, you know what? Now they've got it in here, don't they? There we go. Barovia. It's like a place with the gypsies. To get into this place, we got this guy we had to go talk to, and it hooked up to a gypsy train, and then they took us off through this fog, way the hell away, and we eventually reached this city, and we don't know where the outskirts are, but if you go into the forest type area in the fog, you get attacked real bad. Anyhow, what it's really about, oh, I didn't even show you the moon and tell you about that one. That sucks. Well, if you look at this moon here, it's non-existent. It'll come out though, and you really don't want it to come out. So there are deer here, but they're meant to be something that you have to collect so they'll actually even fight you. But in this little Vistani people camp, if you look, it's pretty much a wagon. But that goes with gypsies and things. Well, it also goes with like the Wizard of Oz and traveling shows like that. But man, the old Proto-Indo-Europeans had wagons and things like that. It goes to the Wayback Machine. If you go in here, you can use your cards and talk to this gypsy lady. I don't have a card now, or it'd be white instead of red. See, it requires a poster. And a poster is this little hunt but I put them all in the bank, and I put them all on one character in case I need them in the future. And the only one that's got ones on it is my other main that has there. But let's go up to these standing stones and situations, and I'll tell you a strange deal about Halloween and where it comes from. So you see these standing stones here, and these guys are messing with it, right? Well, I've got it even lit up, so let me go ahead and clear them all from this. Oh, I drew the deer in too. If you look, see this wraith, this soul puppet? I'm actually, so I have to knock them down now that they've ruined them all. Later I'll have to do things that fix them back. That soul puppet that I have there is, I steal somebody's soul and then I use it. By the way, my character here, let me load up the camp again. My character here is a Scourge Warlock, so she's powers of the undead, and she puts curses on people and things. And what's weird about it is, if you'll watch even the demo of the thing, she injures herself with a knife, but whenever she does, she's put a curse on you, and you feel the pain, not her. It does some damage to her, but much more to you. And so it kind of works on that composure, but also she can take your soul at the end of it, and she makes them fight for you for a while. But it only fights for a while, then it goes away, and then it keeps. There's a way you can set it up to where it keeps fighting, though. So recently did one, and I showed you. Well, let's just go around. Another pile of standing stones. But if you look at here, under Yesterhill, so of yesterdays, we have a bunch of Celtic symbols going around on here, and this symbol. So when I tell you that it's all in Dungeons and Dragons and they use old folklore, it's what it's all about. This is a thing like Stonehenge, and albeit if you could see during the day, you'd be able to tell where everything was. And if you look, some of these places are lined up to where things come up at certain seasons at night. We've talked about that a lot. There's those standing stones again. I could knock it down, but I've already completed well long ago. Let's see, is this the way? There's also giant standing stones or monoliths that have that Celtic writing and stuff that's all on it. But let's go up here to the one that looks more like Stonehenge, and it's even got a bonfire going on, which isn't too big, but boom, schmack, schmack. Let the soul puppet wobble. So I even get liar's charms from in here. But here we have a stone circle. Inventory full. I don't need that. You can tell they're all Celtic marking, and then of course they're got lintels on top of them and everything, and this is very Celtic looking, surely, isn't it? Well, there's a story about Stonehenge. Well, actually, it's a story about the circle of the giants built long ago. And of course, because the Stonehenge is the circle of giants, as people have called it a lot, and I understand that they've put these two together. Well, what's the story that goes along? Well, it's apparently from a time of witches and all of those things in folklore. And the strange telling is that what they had done with this magical place that they had created, for they took it and made it to where it was mounting heaven to earth. And now looking at astrology, we're like, okay, so yeah, that's what that place is. And we go, okay, what do they do there? Well, apparently what it was used for, although it wasn't its total purpose, was in a strange way like, have you ever watched Superman, where whenever they get to the ice fortress that he's got, and he gets inside the little deal, and he's going to change himself back so where he's just immortal for Lois. Well, when the bad guys come, he does it, and it does the switcheroo, right? Well, what they were going to do was they were supposed to have this big old celebration for all the demons of the earth. And tellings like this made people think that they had some kind of devil worshipping thing going on because of what paganism brought, by the way, if you look at that oddly. But so, this demons of the earth thing, they had trapped them in the center of this giant stone circle, and secretly, where they didn't know it, and they said they were going to pay homage to them every year and this, that, and the other, and they all were killed. What? Well, yeah, and then once per year, to keep the thing going and to not lease them back on the earth, they had to continue to do this and pay homage. So, what do they do? Well, it's a secret rite. Now, it sounds weird, but what they used to do was put on weird masks and outfits and stuff and dressed up like demons and everything, and then went around to the people, and the people had to give up something that was incredible and something nice. They couldn't do just something, here's a stick, and that's not, no. Unless they were to carve it into something real nice, or some type of magic effigy or something would go along with it. And quite often to give it to them, that'd be, of course, thrown in the fire, given to the fire. But quite often, things were given that was medicines, and things given that were sweets, like honey and candies and things like that. Now, this was a form of sacrifice and misunderstood in a way, and you can tell from the folklore idea. But these people were sacrificing to the dead people that they had come before, the dead of that year especially. But families carried on, and what they would do is get together and talk about what had happened. Do you remember Grandpa, and this, that, and the other? And people that knew your grandpa would tell stories, and then all these stories that would carry on and get told all through your kids growing up and hearing it too. And guess what? Pretty soon your grandpa, and they're telling the things, and then you go away, but they're still telling the stories about you and from other people and from times before, and that's how things passed on. But what's this thing where this ritual with these demons and stuff? Well, if you really look at it, ancient people believed that when you got sick and so on, this was demons and so on. And so ritualistically, what they had done is taken all of the sicknesses of the earth and put them in there, and from sacred fire had burned it and put it all away. But after hearing about this and getting conflagrated, and then people that monastic faith took over and did all these things, next thing you know, it's a paganistic thing and it's of the devil. Because we look at demons and the Greeks and so on like that, and the Sumerians, and it wasn't like that. There were good ones and bad ones like Pazuzu and so on like that. It's in The Exorcist. So whenever I say, oh, it's all around you, it's all around you. And in fact, when you stand in this stone circle, which isn't really allowed anymore, it's all around you. But it's all around you because it lines up to special places. Wish you could see the stars right now. And if they had it right in the game, oh, where is this? Where is that? Hey, the sun's fixing to come up here in another few hours. Where does it come up? Well, it comes up lined up right through this gap here, lined up with this, well, the other half of the circle's gone, isn't it? And we're lucky. We're lucky that things like Stonehenges and stuff were kept, and that others were buried, or we wouldn't have a lot of this stuff. But now let me go, hell, I didn't talk about the moon and do the other things, so let me just travel right back to where we were and tell you about that. We'll leave this area. See that distant cottage way up there? That's where Dracula lives. But he's got a different name in here. This is the way it looks during the day. But It looks totally different during their celebration of Mask, or the Masquerade of Liars. Boom. For whenever you come in, there is no day, there's only a night. But make no mistake about it that this was something else that was going along with it from a long time ago. And what the oddity is here, people, that I found out when I was trying to study off into it, and then I found out from others who have studied deep into it and other little pieces and then put it all together, was that ancient cultures of all types have this same symbology, all of which these Caucasian people were in with a long time ago. Looks like leading back to 10,000 years ago in places. And what's funny is they all have, during this, basically this week worth of time that surrounds Halloween itself, is a Day of the Dead ceremony. And that people even in the New World, and some of them are Indians, but especially the Aztec and Mayans and so on, they had this Day of the Dead. So when you see that in Mexico and you think, oh, that probably came from the Spaniards. No, the Spaniards freaked out that they had it at the same time. It's documented, well documented. They had it going on. But if you say Halloween, it is the eve, All Hallows Eve. For the next day is All Hallows Day. Well, what does that go with? Well, death and resurrection and so on too. But it also goes on to do with being reverent to your family. And so death may be a scary thing for each individual, but everybody goes through it, and hundreds of more people that are interacted with you whenever you pass away are caught up into it. It's too bad nowadays that communities aren't smaller like this, for whenever they used to tell old stories, they would bring you up again and keep you alive in a way by telling these ancient stories about when you used to be alive and what had happened and what you told about your grandpa and what he had said about, yeah, and it can fold back. Eventually a lot of these get lost, but if they've got enough snap maybe, and it's one of the cool stories, it gets passed on through time and then grabbed up in a mythology and then passed on through folklore. It's what I thought was so neat studying these folklore types of things, is that some of them sounded outlandish and just freaky, and you're like, what does that have to do with anything? And you find out, well, they used to tell this story at Halloween and so on, and da-da-da and everything, and you go, oh, it's a famous one about something that's passed on from ages past. This Halloween idea, what's it got to do with the stars and the sky and everything? Well, look at the moon. Oh, that thing's huge. I don't know if you can make it out without my brightness crescent right near it, but right up on this side is a swirl that, if you really went around the whole thing, would look pretty much like Saturn. But if you look at the bottom part of it, it almost makes the moon into a comet. And you can tell what's happened here is that something hit the moon, and it looked like it struck it right about the bottom of it. In fact, we go to look at the moon now, and you know there's this big boom under the bottom of it that it hit. When you think about something like that hits, you think, well, some of that hits the moon, but a lot of it gets cast out. We're fixing to run right through it, and the rest of it's going to get vacuumed up by our gravity, much more than the moon's. And we're fixing to have a big meteor storm. Well, ironically, at this same time of year, there's a meteor storm that we experience, and it's a meteor shower, meteor storm. It comes right from the shoulder of Taurus, or around the Pleiades. It's a Taurid meteor shower. There's one early in the year, too, that we were running through the same belt of crap that we run through every year. And all these baseball-sized objects, which are pretty much like the crap that's cast out here, comes to our atmosphere. It looks like it emanates from Taurus. A lot of people have made the connection, and I feel strongly that this is all a remnant from a comet that exploded into pieces, much like the Comet Levy pieces that we went through, or that we saw hit Jupiter. Everybody talks about how Jupiter's a great vacuum cleaner and it's helped it. Yeah, well, if it's over on the other side of the sun, whenever it comes in towards Earth, it ain't doing nothing. And not that it's going to catch everything that goes. And whenever it goes by it, maybe it disintegrates it. Well, there's this comet Inky that's part of this same stream we know that's one chunk that's huge. If we ever run into it, it's going to cause a huge problem. And here I go again, fear-mongering about comets hitting the Earth. But it looks like it goes back at least to the Younger Dryas event, perhaps, where something like exactly that had happened. And perhaps it happened around this same time of year. And then it kept happening, but never a big thing, or hardly a big thing. And people keep thinking, well, we keep running through it, so there's got to be less and less and less. It's slowly vacuuming up all the pieces. You see some long streakers every once in a while, and they say some pieces the size of dice make it down every year and so on. Well, a couple years ago, size of a football made it down through and went through a dude's roof and so on like that. But they tell you over a ton of stuff comes in every year whenever this happens, or tons of stuff comes into our atmosphere every year from atmospheric contact like this. But this whole stream, much like that Saturn ring that it looks like is kind of going around the moon there, is out there, and we run through it twice a year. And there's a whole string of it, which Comet Inky is one little place on this. And like a skip on a record and taking a chance and a tetherball going around real quick and shooting a gun and hoping the tetherball catches it and Jupiter runs into it and things like that, we've got chunks that are coming around and flying at us. And they used to say it was the Halloween meteor storm. It was the witches' brooms that was going on. It was witches coming from that Pleiades. It was the 7 sacred witches, and they were zipping into our atmosphere. Far, far away. It was angels coming down to do this same type of thing for All Saints' Day. It was many things. And so sometimes when you look at something as simple as Halloween and a jack-o'-lantern and ideas that went on, and you go, oh, well, that's something we did and it's a modern thing about candy. Well, it's been changed a whole lot over time. And surely the candy industry got behind it and said, hey. But at the same ideal, what do you think about the idea that if we stopped Halloween, there would unleash demons or things upon the earth? Would you think that all of a sudden there'd be a bunch of ghouls and goblins going around? Or that there would somehow be ghosts that would go around and they'd boo and they'd scare you? Or would you take on the old connotation they were, that there was really sicknesses and things like that were going on, that they were unseen? There's another form of this where, of course, this is to keep away perhaps your relatives that may be pissed off for some reason, and that was the veil closest between you and that. So during that day, you appease them. And the reason you're giving away all this stuff, in actuality, was really just sacrifice, just like the Egyptians used to do and give food and water and things to people who are dead. Just like old mausoleums used to be hooked up with stuff like this, so people could do it. And in modern day, people go, oh, well, that's just wishy-washy and hokey stuff. Used to be people, I think, probably had that figured out too. It was real symbolic. You know what's strange about some symbolic things? As you can tell from this and Christmas and so on, some things you just do because everybody does it. And your parents did it, and they had you believe in the thing. So whenever your kids come along, aha, let's see if I can do this pretty good, and you carry it on. Well, that's Christmas and stuff, but Halloween and these other ideas, how long's this been going on? That was the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Remember that growing up as a kid? They started changing outfits, though, and the outfits now are all of a sudden superheroes and stuff. In fact, when I was a kid, my brother was the Blue Falcon one year, and I was Casper the Friendly Ghost. Yeah, the outfit was really just a little white ghost outfit with a pointy back of the head, and I had a Casper mask on. Nowadays, I don't think they would even have that outfit out for if you didn't have the Casper mask on. Anyhow, but Casper the Friendly Ghost. Yeah, people remembers that. That had something really to go along with it. Anyhow, there's probably a few more things I had thought to tell you before it even started here. I got off on because I had thought about even talking about the moon and the situation because, hey, seriously, you can see a meteor storm going on right now. It gets real strong between now and Halloween and just a few days after, and then it quits, and we go through that every year. There's a Leonid and then a Taurid meteor shower. They're pretty neat to watch. It's the Halloween fireworks. It's nature's fireworks. Yeah, well, sometimes you don't want to see a boom. Really wouldn't take too much to do something that would make people think totally different about all these type of things. We're just luckily we haven't had one like that. We've had one come over Russia a couple of years ago and blow up in the air, but it lit up like middle of day or brighter. Blew out some windows and screwed up some people a little bit. The Tunguska event. Well, what if it ever did it over any populated areas? Sumerians tell you a story where that happened. Egypt tells you a story where it happened. There's stories of things that are about meteors. Hell, even the Epic of Gilgamesh, they describe Enkidu as being a meteor that fell from heaven that's made of iron and too hard to pick up. I did a video about it recently. I'll probably put this out right about Halloween or a week before coming in and now. I've already done a few about Halloween, in fact, jack-o'-lanterns and so on, going along with the Headless Horseman and things like that. Did a couple others, and I did another one I may or may not even show and may just let it go because I was meaning to do something like this, but go with a whole different viewpoint. And I got caught up having to do a weekly and a whole challenge, but I was able to show you Burning Man and a giant skeleton, and we talked about golems, Frankenstein also recently, and how that works with this whole situation too. So it's kind of weird, but a lot of these things have a whole grouping of symbologies that hook up together, and you think of it as one thing, but some of those, in some ways, are the same thing in different ways put together because it did mean the same thing. And some of the pieces of this are fairly recent, and others are extremely old. How old? Well, as old as when something like that might have even happened. Or perhaps a comet that came real close. Projected size of the comet Encke is supposed to be some 60 times the size of Comet Halley, which is one of the bigger ones that we see that comes in every once in a while, for 70 years or so. But they said if you took all the stuff that's the junk, little baseballs, and add that all together, oh wow. At one time there was something huge that came through, and then now apparently it's been all busted up a little bit, but there's got to be some huge chunks still left. Luckily we're not hitting that skip in the record when we're going through the song every year. Twice a year, but in the springtime whenever it does it, it's during the day, facing at the sun really, and so you just can't see it. But comes from the other side during Halloween and this sacred Day of the Dead. So try to remember family members. It's strange that you would even associate this with the dogma we've got attached with it, isn't it? But try to attach this to your family. Think about them. Try to talk to them about it to kids. See if you can find some way to attach that into anything with what's going on with Halloween nowadays. Peace.